Today is April 22nd, 2014, and this is episode 103. This program is intended for informational and educational purposes only. Cryptocurrency is a new field of study. Consult your local futurist, lawyer, and investment advisor before making any decisions whatsoever for yourself. Welcome to Let's Talk Bitcoin, a twice-weekly show about the ideas, people, and projects building the digital economy and the future of money. My name is Adam B. Levine, and today we're hanging out with Stephanie at Media Bistro's recent Inside Bitcoin's New York event. Tatiana Moroz is a singer, songwriter, and a friend of mine. I told her about the artist coin idea we've discussed previously on the show, and with the help of the folks at Mastercoin, decided to take the plunge as one of the very first.
It's sort of like a crowd sale of my future work and the content that I create.
Stephanie caught up with Tatiana to talk innovation in the artist coin space and what comes next.
I help fund BitPay, Armory, and Kraken. Those are kind of the three that I'm helping incubate and working with and funding. And with Armory, we're building out the actual foundation where you can secure your private keys.
We close up today's episode with early investor Trace Mayer. He and Stephanie talk origins and outcomes, the importance of secure, open source infrastructure, and the projects he spends his time on. But first, you might have heard of a little thing called the Decentralized Internet. No? Meet David Irvine, one of the minds behind the Maidsafe project.
For instance, if you had robots, you could teach one French. They would all know French in the world immediately. Or you could teach one how to do CPR. They all know how to do CPR.
It's another long one. Let's get into it.
This is Stephanie from Let's Talk Bitcoin. I'm here at the Inside Bitcoin's New York conference, and it's my great pleasure to talk with David Irvine. He is the founder of Maidsafe, the CEO and founder of Maidsafe.
Hi, Stephanie. Nice to see you.
Thank you so much for being on Let's Talk Bitcoin. So, David, everybody here that I've talked to yesterday and today is talking about Maidsafe. There's a big buzz about it. Everybody's excited about it. And I want to know what it is. For somebody who's never heard of it, your tagline is sort of you're decentralizing the internet. Maidsafe is going to do for data what Bitcoin does for trade. Tell me more about what Maidsafe actually is.
It basically is what we say. It's the decentralization of all internet services. So it all started many years ago, and just before 2006, when we looked at the internet and thought, this is quite a strange thing because all of the computers in the world are connected to every other computer. But for me to speak to you, I have to get permission from Google or whatever. And the information goes from me to them to you, and maybe they let me in, maybe they don't let me in, maybe they monitor my information, maybe they don't. And we thought, this is very strange. And that took a couple of years to think about it, and it was quite interesting because I'm a kind of Richard Feynman fan, and one of his statements is, if you're doing something that you can't find in nature, it's wrong. And then realised that in 13.5 billion years, nature had never created a server-based infrastructure like we have on the internet today. And then I looked at the computers and said, well, if you actually take all the computers and just connect them together, it's much more powerful than any of these large organisations could ever dream of. There's more storage, there's more CPU capability. And then looked back at what we have and thought, well, why should I have to ask anyone to be able to communicate with anyone else? Why can't I just do it? Because it belongs to us all. And then realised that if all of the computers connect together and we're supplying all that computing resource, then the people should have full rights to use that. And the deal of joining the internet shouldn't be between you and a third-party company. It should be between you and the internet. So we kind of figured, well, what we have to do is get all the computers to join together in some kind of global cyber brain, a bit like the blockchain does for trade. Is really get all the computers to join together in a manner that they could provide all of the world's resources to every individual person. And that's really where the Maidsafe story started. And then it took a couple of years to pull it all together. I had to disappear off for 8 months to a place that didn't speak English so I could try and calculate some of this stuff. Uh-huh. And I knew it was going to be calculable. I mean, people would say you're insane, computers go off and on all the time. There's hackers there and there's people spying on you and all the rest of it. You'll never be able to do it. And that to me was a challenge that I loved. So I went away and did this. And it was quite interesting because there's a few really hard things that you've got to solve. Three main things. One is, how do you make data so secure that nobody can read it except you? And how would you store that data on multiple computers which switch off and on the whole time? And the second part was really, what does this cyber brain do? What does it look like? How can all the computers recognize each other to be able to tell, is a good computer good or bad? Is it doing a good job or a bad job? So that autonomous network was a very difficult part of it. So we did that. And then the last problem, which was probably the toughest one, was, okay, we've got highly encrypted data on a network that's autonomous and looks after itself. How do you log into it? You're a person looking at this network. So there's no servers, there's no location for you to send a message to say, let me in. And that's where we had to come up with a self-authentication mechanism, which is really good because you store a piece of information at a known location only to you on the network that you can download from any computer if you ask for that location. And that turns the computer you're working on into your computer.
So the location where the data is stored becomes analogous to sort of like a private key that you have to have in order to access your data, and it's only known to you?
Yeah, it's very similar to that. And how you create that almost private key is you put in a couple of passwords that only you know, and the client software will manipulate the information you give it and download from that key space some information, and then another part of your login decrypts that information locally. And that means that the decision to store your account information is completely yours. So logging in or creating an account on the Maidsafe network is the exact same screen. You put in a couple of passwords, you're creating an account, or you put in a couple of passwords and you're retrieving an account. And that means really you can walk up to any computer or take any mobile phone, log in, and it becomes your mobile phone or your computer for the time you're using it, and then you walk away. And I think that's probably one of the most attractive things about the system, is the deal is between you and the network and nobody else. So you join when you want and you don't join when you don't want to. So the control is completely yours. And I think this is one of the issues with society these days, that if you want to make somebody very stressed, you take away their control. We do that in Guantanamo Bay. We take away people's rights and put them under intense stress. And that happens on the internet because you can be banned off the internet if you say something somebody doesn't like. So this system, when you join, nobody knows you've joined. The network is aware that you're there, and it can communicate your information to your friends that only you know. And that's really the way the internet should have been at the very start. And it set out to go that way, but it fell by the wayside, and companies came in and started trying to monetize this sort of system and advertise to you and take your information and steal your data and spy on you. And that's not a very natural way to run an internet. It's a terrible way to run a network. So the network should be run for the people, by the people, and only the people should say what they want to do on it and what they don't want to do on it. That's really what Maidsafe has been able to achieve.
Wow. So we're not talking, obviously, about logging into like a Windows computer or something that runs iOS. This is a completely new operating system with all new apps that have to be built on top of it. But really, what you're talking about is a tool that would enable somebody to do anything they could do on a normal computer, but it's all distributed and it's all accessible only to them, and it's all private, and it's all under their control, right?
Absolutely. And at the moment, it will run on top of Windows or iOS or any operating system. The logical conclusion is it will become a full operating system itself. But you're right, everything's completely under the control of that person. And that's probably the most important aspect of it, is it's between the individual and the network. That's exactly who makes that decision. And it's logically correct. And that then becomes something that you do find in nature. Ants working together, they don't go through third parties, or, if you see flocks of birds flying together, they don't ask each other, they know how to do this. So it's a much more natural system, it's a logical system, and it uses resources in a much better way, because The server-based system, as well as losing all that control and putting people under stress and duress, requires data centres. And data centres use about 1.5% of the world's electricity. And that's increasing at 60% a year. So we've plugged on to a very natural system, very unnatural items like servers and data centres. And the cost of them to the ecology of the planet is just ridiculous. So it's an ecological disaster, what we're doing just now, as well as taking control.
So it can run on top of existing platforms, but eventually it's going to evolve toward its own kind of operating system and all of its own apps and things that people can do. So the next question, I guess, becomes, how do you incentivize people to contribute computing resources to the system that would allow everyone to access the Maidsafe type of environment?
That's a really interesting question. We were speaking actually to a guy recently, one of the founders of Kazaa and Skype, who had the exact same issue. Why would people keep computers on in the Skype network to keep the Skype network going? And what Skype found was people do it because they want the network to exist. What we've done is taken that a step further. So like Bitcoin has miners, we have what we call farmers. And these are people's computers who just connect to the internet and farm, so they're looking after data and they get paid for looking after the data.
That's cute, yes.
Yeah, farmers. And it really means if you download an application, you've got Maidsafe running, or the Safe network as it is, our mailing list is building very quickly and people are now calling the Safe network their network. So it's not Maidsafe anymore, which is one of our goals. If you download an application, like say a storage type application, Dropbox type thing, all of a sudden it's free. It should be very, very simple to use. It should be stunning, unlimited in space, and include private messaging and sharing and whatnot. So something like Dropbox, but much larger, much more powerful, more efficient. But additionally, what that Dropbox type application would have is a wallet on it. And you would be downloading this application and think, that's great, I'm really happy, it's a fantastic experience, I know that I've not lost any of my data, security or whatever. But good grief, it's also paying me money. So this free software that you use will actually start paying you money. It'll pay money through Safecoin. And the reason it is doing that is because you're providing a resource to the network, which is a valuable resource. But the second part of that story, I think, is even better. There's builders on the network. So the builders are the application developers. And if you decided to build a YouTube application, for instance, on the system, or a Dropbox application, a Google type application, you lock your wallet address into that application as the builder, as the open source developer or closed source, it doesn't matter. As the network itself can tell what applications are successful on it and how much data is being moved about with that application, the application developer also is paid in Safecoin. So that really means that we've found an answer to the open source conundrum of how do you produce applications in an open source environment and get paid. So rather than saying to open source people, now you must become consultants or support organisation or something, what we're really saying to these application developers is be builders and be very good at building, because that's what you can do. We don't know if you're good at customer support. We don't really care. If you build an application which is stunning and people use it, the network pays you for that. So people are getting paid for running the applications. Builders are being paid for providing the applications. And the network self-fuels. So it all becomes an ecosystem in its own right. And that's a particularly interesting part for me. It's pretty exciting, actually. And what we're doing today at 4:15 is we're announcing this to everyone to let them know. Not only are we announcing this and giving the system away, there's a crowdfunding thing with no founder shares, so Maidsafe don't get any founder shares from this. Maidsafe as a company will become a builder on the system. So we're really saying to people, you can run your whole company on here, build fantastic applications, and you've already got a revenue stream built automatic. You don't need to think about that. We believe in it so much that we're staking our whole future on it. We are becoming builders on the network, just as anyone else can be. And I think that's a brave move, but it's a typical, probably, Maidsafe move or a Scottish move. If it's correct, and we believe it is correct, we strongly believe it is correct, we will eat at the same table as all of the other developers. So we'll all sort of rejoice in the benefits of being part of this new system. That's a long-term goal for us that we're able to achieve today.
Hi everybody, Adam B. Levine here. Before I became the podcast personality you know today, I used to sell environmentally friendly food service packaging. That's forks, cups, and boxes made from or lined with plant-based plastics or materials. What does this have to do with Bitcoin? It's about creating sustainable systems. It's about closing the loop. I'm very pleased to present one of my latest projects, BitcoinPackaging.com. If you're running a small business and accepting Bitcoin, don't just turn them into dollars. Spend them on what your business needs at BitcoinPackaging.com. Pay below market price and get a further 10% off when you pay with Bitcoin. So, come kick the tires and check us out at BitcoinPackaging.com.
That's a long-term goal for us that we're able to achieve today.
It seems like you've already had a lot of interest and buzz from people who are excited to build on top of Maidsafe, or to be farmers, or to just use it.
Yeah.
Is it ready? Or when are we going to be able to start using it? That's what I'm wondering.
Yeah, we were going to actually put the test network up for today's show, which would have meant taking a particular shortcut in the code, which I've said don't do that. So the test network will be up and running in the next week or so. We expect that to run for maybe 4 to 6 weeks, and people can test this out. Application developers can start building their applications to the API. Then we'll run test network number 2 with the Safecoin production, farmers and builders being paid. That probably will be another 4 to 6 weeks, and then we go into full launch. So within the next short period of months, the whole system will be up and running. And really, we're kind of glad that we're doing it this way, because we don't want to offer fait accompli to the rest of the industry. And we've been getting a lot of developers working with us, and we're really saying, how do you want us to look? What's going to suit you guys the best? And there's, as I say, there's about 170 of them now working with us, and we get great feedback. So with the next 2 to 3 months, we should see the whole thing go through the test phases and then becoming real. And at the point it becomes real, there should be plenty of applications. We're hoping 10, 20, 30 applications will be released with the network. That's going to be a very exciting time.
So you told me that you've been thinking about this since 1997 and actively working on it since 2006, is that right?
Yeah.
So, how are you feeling getting close to the launch?
Oh, it's a strange thing, because this is the correct thing, and people are excited by it, and they're starting to tell us how excited they are. And personally, I just think, yeah, that's good, because it's the right thing to do. This is the correct sort of chain of events. And personally, I don't really get too excited by these kind of logical things that are correct. It's a bit like when I was on the lifeboat and going out in rough weather to save someone who was in trouble at sea. The closer you got to the casualty and the worse the weather was, the more focused you become. And I think this is very similar. This is something that's so important for humanity and us as a species, that the team around us and back in the office in Scotland are unbelievably focused, because we need to do this. This has to happen. And it doesn't have to happen for us, it has to happen for everyone, because our impression, we make this free to the whole world, then the other 5 billion that don't have internet connectivity, or people who are put off the internet, can all come back on it. And if someone down in Africa or some of the other poorer countries can get access to this data and access to this communication system and start curing diseases, then that's a phenomenal return for us. And that's every bit as important as a good, solid business model. So I think we're managing to achieve an awful lot in one go here, is implementing a very solid business model that should be profitable for the vast amount of developers in the planet. and at the same time giving individuals and humans the ability to really start collaborating and researching worldwide. So that research ability to me is incredibly important. I can't wait until someone from some unknown place either invents something we didn't think possible or cures a disease we couldn't cure. That's really going to be the thing that says Project Safe was worth it. We think that should be soon.
Right. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the structure of the organization. You are someone clearly who believes in decentralization all the way. Anything that can be centralized should be decentralized. And, right now, as I understand it, Maidsafe is sort of structured as a company where there's a nonprofit entity that owns about half of it, and then 30% is owned by the employees.
Yep.
And then the other 20%, I'm not clear on, but...
That's private investors. So that was we had to raise about $5 million to get here. And we did that through friends and family that we showed the story to, and we told them the story, and it was quite interesting because away at the start I do a presentation on the whiteboard that explains what this is. It takes about 4 hours, but I do tell a couple of jokes, so it's not too bad. And 100% of the people who've seen that presentation invested in us and believed in us.
Wow.
So that's why we can remember the date, the 22nd of February 2006. That's people started believing enough in this that they gave up money to allow us to do it. So we do intend to give them phenomenal returns, but as the way that it's structured is for them to get phenomenal returns, everyone involved with the project, even companies we've not met yet, should get the same phenomenal return. And that's a pretty decentralized way to look at things. And it's really, I think personally, I believe you get much more strength by giving. So the more you give away, the stronger you become. And not being completely money driven to the extent of want to rob people of their wealth, but looking at providing value for me is a really essential way to work. So the more value you can provide to the more people, the greater the collective wealth, and to become part of a society that are as wealthy as each other. It seems to be quite sensible, because if you're the flower in the field that grows taller than any other one, you'll just get blown over by the wind. So you're better to share a bit out and let all your friends grow with you. And when you do that, you maintain stable relationships. That, I think, is crucial to people's own ability to live in a happy manner. There's no point in going to bed rich and sad. You go to bed very comfortable with lots of friends. And, I don't think all your friends should go to bed with you, but, that's what our kind of outlook, and my outlook in life is incentivise as many people as possible, give them as great a return as possible, but also a feeling of inclusion. So it's not just putting money in a horse and getting a good return on that. It's this feeling of inclusion and saying, here's your return that's whatever multiple times your investment, but potentially we've saved lives here. We may have changed things for the better for a great many people. So be happy about what you've done. It's almost like giving to charity but getting a return from it. And that's really what we're striving for with Maidsafe. And it seems to be paying off for us now.
Right. So do you consider Maidsafe a sort of a DAO or decentralized autonomous organization, or is it going to that direction in the future?
I think it's one of the things. I think the way I see Maidsafe is there'll be lots of Maidsafes which won't have anything to do with us or our investors. There'll be lots of Maidsafe type companies doing pretty much the same work that we're doing, and they'll benefit as much as we'll benefit. So I see decentralization that way, i.e. we don't keep control. One of the things that we're looking to do is take Coda, for instance, and we've got a huge portfolio of intellectual property rights and trademarks and patents and whatnot, and really place them with Coda so that we can start sharing them with the whole community so that we all become protected. And I think Genghis Khan was able to take over most of the world because he really persuaded people that it was a great idea. He couldn't have done it on his own. So big changing events in the world require as much cooperation with as many people as possible. And this is really the way that we're looking to go. And the internet's a $5 trillion marketplace. There's certainly plenty of revenue to make as many people comfortable as possible, but more importantly, there's revenue to enable people to start contributing to society, and that there's key. If someone, for instance, was to cure a cancer that you were eventually going to get, it would be very valuable for us. So there's a lot of ways of looking at decentralization of decentralized companies, and I think you can have companies which are small, don't grow too large, and replicate those companies. For a lot of software development and research into medical things, it requires people in the same office with whiteboards and debating and arguing. So I think there's a halfway house for me, that everybody can't be on Skype trying to talk about very in-depth things. So lots of small companies distributed about is the target that we're aiming for.
Paint a picture for me in, maybe 5 years. Someone's going to log into a decentralized computer or perhaps phone or tablet or something like that with just a couple of passwords. They'll be able to communicate with their friends anywhere in the world. They'll be able to send and receive Bitcoin payments. They'll be able to store their data, access all their files that they've ever created, do other types of social networking, email, encrypted email perhaps, messaging. Tell me what that's going to be like, or what else you see people being able to do with this.
I think that's only the start. I think that will happen within a year. The current internet services will be replaced by this, and that's okay. It's not particularly exciting. It may be great that we've all got this privacy, security and freedom. What Maidsafe or Project Safe really allows, though, is the next version of applications and communications, the things that we haven't even considered today, like a decentralized federated news system, which would be a large thing for me. It's the news is collected by the people, ranked by the people, and then distributed to every person on the planet through an avatar in their own language. And really, I would love to see the Israeli and the Palestinian getting the exact same news, and then see if they hate each other quite as much. And I don't think they will. I think humans are pretty bred to look after other humans, and we make these unnatural borders and political differences between people, and propaganda is used to control that. I think we can start removing some of those barriers pretty quickly. Another thing that I'm particularly motivated by is distributed autonomous intelligence, where we can have machines that can actually own themselves in Bitcoin for a start, which is an interesting aspect, but communicate and collaborate through the cyber brain, which is the Maidsafe network. And that collaboration would pretty much be through maths and logic. So these machines would be coded to try, for instance, if you had robots, you could teach one French, they would all know French in the world immediately. Or you could teach one how to do CPR, they all know how to do CPR. And that ability for all of these AI type machines or CT scanners to be able to start pulling together some of the intelligence that we as humans couldn't even imagine, like a CT scanning machine that could read 3 trillion data points per second, talking to all the other CT scanning machines worldwide, would be able to identify problems that we could never imagine, no matter how good a doctor we were. So distributed autonomous intelligence is another thing, and that's what I think Maidsafe will allow. It's not just the replacement of the current broken and damaged systems and make them more efficient. It's the next swathe of things. And these are only some examples that I can dream of at the moment. And when you actually include all of society and say, what can you all dream of? I think we're going to be absolutely amazed.
That's beautiful. And I love it. But I imagine that there are people out there that don't want information to be decentralized and don't want apps and technologies like this to be decentralized. Yeah. They want the status quo, and they want centralization so that they can keep an eye on people and that they can have the control. Yeah. They can remove the control from the individual and have it in centralized institutions or for themselves. So have you gotten any heat from those kind of people? Have you encountered any issues or pushback for once people realize what you're trying to do?
No heat so far. I think that's to come. But I was thinking today, I've got this talk at 4:15. I was thinking, how do you sum all this up? And what somebody says, what's Maidsafe? What are you trying to do? What's this Project Safe? And I really got it down to one word, and I think it's inevitability. This is not something that's going to be stopped. This is the evolution of mankind. This is our brains moving to the next level. So it's the same inevitability as the car or the internet or the telephone systems or penicillin. And these things, especially the internet, is starting to make inroads into reducing greed and corruption and start to make us all a little bit more educated on an even basis, especially with some of the university projects at the moment. So this is inevitable. There's no point trying to stop it. It's a very much King Canute approach. So we've got it. It's open source. It's available to everyone. There's many copies of the system about. But it is inevitable. You can't stop evolution. And it doesn't matter. I mean, there was Luddites years ago tried to stop the Industrial Revolution. It doesn't work. People tried to stop trains. People tried to stop telephones. Almost everything. Bitcoin, for instance, is going through that at the moment. And it's a great thing because mass change to society requires that there's pushback. And that pushback is probably important to make sure that we're doing the correct thing and we're doing it regardless. So the more people push back, the more secure we'll make the system and the more efficient it'll become. So it actually becomes a self-defeating thing to push against evolution.
Wow, I love it. So David, where can people go online to find out more about Maidsafe and about you and how to get involved with the crowdfunding?
Maidsafe.net is the main website for Maidsafe. And the crowdfunding is safecoin.io. Safecoin's the digital currency that's underpinning the whole business model for all of the builders and farmers. So safecoin.io and maidsafe.net. And I have a blog where I certainly talk about a lot of strange things. Metaquestions.me. So more ideas there.
Great. David Irvine, thank you so much for talking with me today. This has been really cool, and I can't wait to see where this technology goes and check in with you again at some point in the future. Thank you so much.
Brilliant, Stephanie. Thank you very much.
All right, this is Stephanie from Let's Talk Bitcoin. We're here at Inside Bitcoins NYC, and I've got Tatiana Moroz with me. Hi, Tatiana.
Hi, Stephanie.
I'm really excited to chat with you because this is we're recording this right before your big concert tonight, and you're announcing a special, exciting announcement, right?
Yes, we're announcing the advent of Tatiana Coin this evening. So it's going to be really exciting. I'm doing it with Mastercoin, and we're going to do it at the New York City Bitcoin Center. We're having a DJ and all sorts of fun stuff, so it should be fun.
Cool. So what is Tatiana Coin? Is this like the beginning of, sort of crypto equities? Does it have to do with the fact that you're a musician? And are they like buying equity in your songs?
It's sort of like a crowd sale of my future work and the content that I create. So the way it's still definitely being developed, so things are kind of changing as we go along. But the way that we're looking at it right now is that people would kind of use it like an Indiegogo campaign, but instead of just getting prizes, they would also get tokens, which they could later redeem with Tatiana stuff, and then those tokens would later on be interchangeable with other artist coins and other coins created on the Mastercoin protocol. So we hope that the value of it will go up as I become more popular, and this way it's a great way, in my opinion, to get the fans involved so they can have a longer term experience with you and also get something back for believing in me early. So I'd like to see it extend to a lot of different artists, so I'm going to be the guinea pig.
Right. Wow, that's really cool. So it sounds like you're one of the first people to do this. I mean, do you have other plans to, are you going to sell concert tickets with it, or are you going to use the blockchain for other purposes related to your work?
I literally just started working on this 2 weeks ago, so the possibilities, in my opinion, are endless. The way that I would like to really be able to help is by serving as that example, then maybe making a model for especially musicians to get funded. Because something that I found in New York, I used to work at a lot of different recording studios, and the worst people are in the studio, and all these great artists, they don't even have the money to get in there. And if they've got a few people that are really willing to work with them, I think that this is more of a long-term investment in the artist. So I want to see that help revolutionize the music industry.
Right. So Do you see in like 5 years every artist having their own sort of coin?
Well, 5 years is pretty soon, but I think that, yeah, I would like to see different things funded this way. And not just art, like artists in terms of musicians. Like, what about films? What about video ideas? All sorts of creative endeavors. I'm sure that Mastercoin probably is thinking some more practical companies, but for me, I see the possibilities in terms of the creative side.
So why did you choose to go through Mastercoin? There are some other protocols available, like, Counterparty and BitShares. Why did you go with Mastercoin?
Well, I have a lot of good advisors, and we kind of looked over all the different things that everybody was offering. And what I really like about Mastercoin is that they have a team there that I can actually call up and bounce ideas off of, and they seem really enthusiastic about it. And for me, that person-to-person experience is really important, which you don't necessarily get with other companies. So that's why I chose Mastercoin.
So what would somebody have to do to get some of your tokens? Like, would they have to download the Mastercoin software, or like, what do they have to? How easy is it, basically?
I think it's pretty easy. I think that basically you would just be going through, Mastercoin has their own wallet, right? We're not even issuing the coins until after we do the crowdfunding thing. So what I want to do is make it as easy as possible.
Actually, I don't even know. How do you monetize your work? Like, do you sell concert tickets? Do you sell albums or songs? Like, how does that work?
Well, I never want to cut out the average regular old fan, right? This is almost like a super fan thing. So they would get exclusivity, special videos that I don't necessarily release to the public, maybe a little bit early. They would get discounts on albums. They would get to participate in different contests where we say, okay, well, do you like this version better or this version better? What's going to make it onto the album? Which album cover do you like better? I mean, I think you can just be creative with it, and I haven't outlined all of that stuff yet, but that's kind of what I'm going to focus on next week. This week, I'm kind of just getting people excited and getting their feedback about what they would want from that experience as well.
Okay, so those are things that you just listed that you don't do currently, but you would like to do, and that it would be possible to do with Tatiana Coin.
Well, I think that this provides me with a lot more structure in terms of making sure that I end up doing things like that. It gives me things to plan and ways to interact with people, and I don't know, it kind of holds me to a certain interaction level, because you can get on the road and then next thing you know, you haven't written a blog in 2 years, and well, maybe not that long, but you know what I'm saying. I think that having that kind of set date, it's like a relationship. You want to cultivate that, so this will kind of facilitate that, I guess, a little bit more than just tune into my show whenever it's on and that's all.
Cool. All right. So where can people go online to find out more about the coin and about your music?
They can go to TatianaMoroz.com or TatianaCoin.com, and there's information on both of those. I'm on Twitter with Queen Tatiana and YouTube Forevermore Tatiana, so I'm putting out a bunch of videos on there too.
Thank you so much for chatting with me, and good luck with your concert tonight. I'll be there. See you later.
Awesome. See you later on.
Use Bitcoin whenever you pay. Use Bitcoin whenever you pay. Use Bitcoin whenever you pay.
CryptoKit is the world's first Chrome browser Bitcoin wallet. It's the easiest, fastest Bitcoin wallet payment system. With a simple one-click install, it takes just seconds to get your wallet set up. And because CryptoKit finds the address and payment for you, there's no more fussing around or tab switching. CryptoKit is more than just a wallet. It comes with a preloaded PGP encrypted social network, news feeds from Reddit and Google, and up-to-date charts from exchanges. Finally, CryptoKit Directory allows you to make two-click payments with any of the BitPay merchants. Once you install CryptoKit, you won't need anything else. For more information or to download CryptoKit, visit CryptoKit.com.
Let's Talk Bitcoin is heard each week by thousands of people who are participating in the new digital economy. Our listener base of Bitcoin owners, miners, investors, technologists, and merchants is growing fast. We offer a limited number of short advertising slots in each show to keep our listeners engaged and to provide maximum impact for our sponsors. If you'd like to talk to us about Let's Talk Bitcoin, send us an email at sponsors@letstalkbitcoin.com.
This is Stephanie for Let's Talk Bitcoin. I'm here talking with Trace Mayer. Hi, Trace.
Hey,
Welcome to Let's Talk Bitcoin.
glad to be here.
You are pretty famous in the world of people who want their privacy.
We launched howtovanish.com back in about mid-2008. And it's, help people take control of their privacy, because there's so many threats like identity theft, etc., that can just really wreak havoc on people and cost a lot of money. And there's a lot of small, simple things you can do to help protect your privacy. And if you're just conscious of your privacy hygiene, I mean, we take a shower every day. Like, why don't we be cognizant of the data and information that we're leaving around in the world?
Yeah, it's especially relevant now with not just the NSA and government spying and all kinds of governments wanting to know what you're doing so they can tax you and regulate you, but also companies using your information to market stuff to you.
Oh, yeah, and not just market stuff, but Google, for example, got a patent on price discrimination. So they'll use your web browsing history, and so will Amazon, and from that, they'll actually serve you a different price.
Wow.
Yeah, so they can charge you more, charge you less, because they have a little bit more knowledge about you, and so they know what your elasticity of demand is going to be, or can at least reasonably approximate it. And, pretty soon, credit cards might be integrated with your health insurance, for example, or they'll look at your buying patterns there, charge you more health insurance because you bought Domino's Pizza. I think that was the ad. So
I hear your credit score can affect the insurance rates that you pay for all kinds of stuff, including health insurance.
It wouldn't surprise me. I mean, if I were an insurance company, I'd probably use credit scores because there's actually a study done, like your health and your wealth are the most tightly correlated, and so even more than like educational level or zip code, etc. So, I mean, yeah, there's a lot to whether you can responsibly manage your credit and whether you can responsibly manage your health.
Wow.
So, for insurance companies, I definitely see why they'd want access to that data or information, but I don't necessarily want to give it to them, right?
Yeah.
So, or at least not give it to them without getting a lower premium, and so, which they might not want to give me. They might want to
give you a higher one because you paid higher for stuff before, right?
Yeah, well, if I pay a higher premium, but they have more knowledge that decreases the risk, then they can make more profit. So, it's just people need to understand that, like, their data, their information, all of this stuff, it's valuable. Information can be gleaned from it for pricing signals. And, corporations, whatnot, they're going to take advantage of it to make their shareholders the most amount of money as they can, if they can.
And your background is as an attorney, right?
So accounting, law degree. I don't practice as an attorney.
So tell me how you first got interested in Bitcoin and sort of what excited you about Bitcoin.
So I came across Bitcoin on the internet way back in the early days, kind of like Roger Ver.
What's the early days? Like 2010, 2011?
Yeah, maybe even before then, because we wrote an article on how to vanish, actually a YouTube video for how to vanish about Bitcoin, published, I think, January of 2011. So, well before that. And I was just fascinated with it because it's pseudo-anonymous. I mean, you could realize from its architecture with the blockchain, I've never considered it anonymous or something that you'd necessarily even want to do illicit things with, because it's relatively easy to at least trace transactions. But in terms of not having to give a merchant all your information when you're checking out, etc., I'm like, oh, that's really cool. And plus, it's equity-based and there's no counterparty risk. So I wrote a book in 2008 called The Great Credit Contraction, and I see Bitcoin as a potential solution to that. And so, yeah, I mean, Bitcoin kind of tickled the ears in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I'm curious what the reaction was among the readers of your site when you started to get interested in Bitcoin and started writing about it and so forth. I know you have a beginner's Bitcoin book that you give away on your website, but I could imagine kind of two camps. One who's really interested in it, perhaps younger people, and another who says, this is a Ponzi scheme. So what was it from your readers?
No, a lot of them just didn't understand it, which I don't blame them. That's why I did write the freebitcoinguide.com to help people get into Bitcoin, kind of experiment with the technology. But also with my other site, runtogold.com, where, I published The Great Credit Contraction. So I talked with a lot of the gold bugs and a lot of everybody in that niche. And some of them understood it, some of them didn't. Some of them I had to walk them through sending their first transaction, like Jeff Berwick, for example. I sent him his first Bitcoin transaction, walked him through everything. Tom Woods, Lou Rockwell, antiwar.com, just a lot of these sites. I eventually, just got so fed up with some of the negative resistance that I wrote an article on how to vanish, why Liberty proponents, why Bitcoin's a litmus test for whether you're a Liberty proponent or not. And in that article, I made the argument that when you're paying with a credit card or giving a donation with a credit card, I mean, all that information is by de facto collected and archived, database stored, searchable. So, like, if you're a real, if you're a problem at the TSA and you want to figure out who to harass, you could just query the database, figure out everybody who's made a donation to antiwar.com and a donation to LouRockwell.com. And if the donations have been over $50, they're automatically screened for secondary inspection with TSA. You could write a query like that. And so whether Lou Rockwell and Antiwar intend for the information to be used that way, it is able to be used that way. So they have to, they're either intentionally or unintentionally what's called a honeypot for the intelligence establishments. And so they should accept Bitcoin donations because your identity is not necessarily tied directly with the transaction like with credit cards. So it drastically increases the cost on being able to link the two. They can't just run a query like that. That I was like, oh, well, that's kind of cool. It's force multiplier and very helpful. So yeah, we should be embracing this because it makes it more difficult to collate and get all this various data and information.
Right. So, that's kind of a history, I guess, of where you've gone with Bitcoin and how you got interested in it. But where are you at right now? I think you said you're excited about multi-signature transactions, right?
Yeah. So with Armory, I help fund BitPay, Armory, and Kraken. Those are kind of the three that I'm helping incubate and working with and funding. And with Armory, we're building out the actual foundation where you can secure your private keys. And I think this is one of the big deals with Bitcoin is you can literally hold the private keys of wealth, of property yourself. I mean, there's no eminent domain. You hold the dominion or control. And that's a very libertarian thing, regardless of whether it's tied to identity or trackable or whatever. You holding the private keys instead of a bank or the Fed holding the private keys or the local government holding the private keys in the case of car, real estate, etc. And so with this new multi-sig implementation with Armory, we can hold the private keys in cold storage, which I like to say helps us really protect ourselves from the CIA or NSA, etc. Makes it very secure to hold your Bitcoins. And with multi-sig, it means that you have to compromise multiple computers too, or multiple seeds.
So what is multi-sig for somebody who doesn't know what it is?
Yeah, so you've got your public key, which is your Bitcoin address, and then you have your private key, and that would be one of one. And with multi-sig, there's in the Bitcoin protocol, you can actually have it require, say, 2 of 3, or 5 of 7, or 15 of 20. And so then...
some trading bell going off in the background.
Yeah, Satoshi Squared inside Bitcoins. So if you need, say, 3 of 5, then you have to digitally sign with 3 signatures out of 5 in order to move the Bitcoins instead of just 1 signature. So you could have that then on 5 different computers or however your own personal situation is set up to do.
Right, because an individual could potentially be coerced into giving up their private keys or whatever, even if you're the only one who holds your private keys. But if you're in a situation of coercion, perhaps, and in order to move any of your Bitcoins out of your cold storage life savings, you need, 3 of 5 people to sign off on it. And those 3 of 5 people don't even necessarily know who each other are, then it's pretty hard to coerce someone into giving up their Bitcoins that way.
Yeah, you can definitely build stuff like that. One of the reasons I wanted to get Armory funded and built and everything like this is because from accounting, we have a concept called segregation of duties. And, in order for Wall Street to come in and bring in, say, $500 million, they have to feel comfortable that it's being properly secured. It's the elephant in the room. And in order to do that with a centralized entity, you have to presume that your employee is malicious. They might be a good person, but you have to presume they're malicious. In fact, you should probably presume that they're all malicious. And so, you need to decentralize, you need to distribute the trust among enough people where they're not likely to collude together, even if coerced. And so, like in my case, I don't say whether I have any Bitcoins, but even if I did, I would secure them in a way where, like, even if my niece were abducted, my nephew were abducted, like, maybe we need them at the vault in order to get access to the vault, in order to get to the private keys that could actually move the Bitcoins. That could be deep cold storage of Bitcoins. And then you might have, like, cold storage of Bitcoin. So, maybe I can get access to $50,000 worth of Bitcoins or something pretty easily. But you're having to trade off security and convenience. But if you're building for institutions or organizations, you have to pretty much presume that everybody's going to be malicious, and so you need to build the system so that they're not going to be likely to collude.
Right. So is this doable now? Is it ready for prime time?
Well, we have a working demo implementation of Bitcoin Armory with multi-sig cold storage already. I mean, that's what we're demoing today.
At the Inside Bitcoins.
Here at Inside Bitcoins, April 2014.
Can someone download that and play around with it?
Yeah, you can download it, play around with it. It's still a little rough around the edges, so it's going to need to get polished off. But yeah, it'll probably be ready for prime time in the next few weeks or month or so. And that means Wall Street could come in with like big amounts of money and feel comfortable with it, or an insurance company or a bank.
And how does that work on the blockchain? Would you be able to see that multiple parties signed off on a certain transaction? So,
yeah, I mean,
like, would we be able to track if a large financial institution did engaged in a multi-signature transaction and say, oh, this must mean that 12 of the 13 executives said that this was approved this and said that it was okay?
You're probably not necessarily going to see it to that granularity unless you know what exactly is going on behind the scene. But just a general overview, there's going to be a difference, like on the address. Usually addresses start with a 1, and the multi-signature addresses, they'll start with a 3. And so, that's a good way that you can see whether more multi-sig addresses are being used. But there are more creative ways that we can distribute keys also, where there might be some obfuscation about how many people are signing, who's signing, etc. Because we want to have good operational security, and part of that's not leaking information.
Right. On the other hand, though, it's also an opportunity for transparency, right? For instance, for companies who want people to be able to see that certain transactions are being approved by the appropriate parties, right?
Yeah, like say that you wanted to know that your food was coming from Whole Foods. You wanted to know that the supply chain were all organic, and that they were not sending any money to buy drones, for example, to bomb innocent civilians. Well, you can enforce that all through the blockchain in a very transparent manner. So, this open source general ledger definitely has an ability to bring more sunshine. It's the best disinfectant in a lot of ways. And so, yeah, you can enforce a lot of that transparency also in the blockchain. And it'll be interesting to see what consumers and individuals demand from their service providers.
What about smart contracts and smart property? Are you into those at all?
I've been following it with interest, like the Ethereum project particularly. But I mean, I think we will be able to do significant stuff with Bitcoin itself, but I think a lot of the innovation that's going to happen around the edges, the innovation without permission that Andreas talks about, it's going to probably be pushed out of Bitcoin and happen in altcoins, and then when it can be folded or rolled back into Bitcoin. So I think we're going to see a lot of opportunity outside of Bitcoin in the altcoins and the other like cryptocurrency 2.0 stuff for development and innovation in this area.
Do you have any particular altcoins or 2.0 protocols that you're following with the most interest or anything like that?
Well, Ethereum is the one that's got kind of most of my interest, but it's still very much early stage. I mean, like currency is just the first application of Bitcoin, and you really have to be in this with the long-term game plan. And so, I mean, you look at my investments, there's Armory, which is the security. You got to be able to secure your Bitcoins. There's BitPay, which is the merchant processing, the currency use. There's Kraken, which is the exchange, and then we got Namecoins on Kraken and Litecoins, and I love this Namecoin concept of decentralizing DNS and using it as this for like authentication and things like that. So, I mean, we have so many different. We have to bring trust back to the internet, especially in this post-Snowden era where trust has been pretty much completely eviscerated from the internet. We're going to have to reconstitute the internet. Things like Maidsafe, Bitcoin are going to play essential roles as additional protocol layers in doing this. At least I think so. And smart contracts are going to definitely come into play in all of this. But baby steps, we have to take a long-term view, I think. Like, this isn't just going to happen in the next 2 years. This is going to be like a 20, 30-year process transitioning into the information age. And it's going to, I think we underappreciate just how much human capital and talent and how complex and technical this work is. And people have to be motivated to do that work. And what motivates them? And how do you motivate them? And how do you get the work done, etc.? And the more complex and technical the work is to do, the harder it is to motivate someone just by writing them a check. But that's where I think that this, ultimately, what we've done with Bitcoin, we've changed the economics of violence, and the internet, and even now with Bitcoin, freedom is more profitable than it's ever been. And it's only going to get more and more profitable. And that's what's, I think, is really exciting, is that we've literally changed the tectonic plates of the economic calculation, of the economics. And that's going to lead to a whole new world being built, in my opinion.
Well, that was great, and it's a great note to end on, but I just have one last question, which is, are you kind of concerned about people data mining the blockchain or any of the potential traceability issues with Bitcoin? And, how do you recommend people get started exploring taking greater financial privacy measures with their Bitcoins?
Yeah, so that's where I think a lot of the altcoins will come into play. They might be on-ramps or off-ramps, as Andreas has talked about. Yeah, the blockchain's definitely going to get data mined. Personally, I haven't really, I don't really do a lot of transactions, if I do any transactions at all. From a criminal defense perspective, can't confirm or deny whether I've done any you need to prove it. And so I think people need to... things like CoinJoin and CoinSwap, which introduce increased plausible deniability, dark wallet, dark coin, Anon coin, building a lot of this stuff in there. We can't make Bitcoin all things to all people all the time. If we're going to be able to harness this unalterable, unforgeable digital ledger, which is the first practical implementation of triple entry bookkeeping, which is a huge, huge advancement in terms of accounting theory and monetary science. If we're going to harness that, we can't necessarily just build into the protocol automatic swapping of coins, because then we can't harness other uses or abilities for that particular resource. And so, we can have a different altcoin that does have that built into it, or we can be using CoinSwap. And misinformation, disinformation, misdirection, you can put information in the blockchain just like everybody else. And so, wild goose chases, they're a lot of fun. And at the end of the day, where are they going to get the resources to continue analyzing and researching all this stuff? And if you just exponentially keep raising the costs on them, intentionally or unintentionally or whatever, great, just make a big old mess for them to try and sift through. It's a lot of fun. And, so I kind of look at it from a perspective of, you need to be practical, you need to be realist, but look at the economics, and that's where, it's when you harness the economics of the situation that you can really begin to cause change, because not everybody values freedom, and for the most part, people have been able to free ride off of the sacrifices other people have made for the last couple hundred years, particularly in America. And I think that we're going to be increasingly moving into an era where people are going to have to take freedom's going to become increasingly a luxury good, and people are going to have to be willing to pay for it and have the human capital and ability to acquire it. And it'll be there for people who want to acquire it. But even here at Inside Bitcoins, Alan Reiner, CEO of Armory, he was talking about holding your own private keys. And you could tell that a lot of people in the audience didn't want to hold their own private keys to their own money. And It's
They're not used to that.
Yeah, I mean, people, and when you think about it, we, like, 2 millennia ago, most people were slaves. And then 500 years ago, most people were serfs. Mm-hmm. And, but we've been decentralizing the keys of wealth and property. And, and then most people worked in a factory. And then, most people worked for a company for 30 years. Now most people are freelancers. I mean, we're moving in this direction of more accountability individually. People have credit cards and bank accounts. I mean, people are taking a lot more control over their finances, whether they intend to or not, but this is another step where you're literally going to be holding the private keys of wealth and property yourself. And that means that you can stake out that sovereign monetary jurisdiction in cyberspace. And that's exciting, and Armory is a great tool to be able to do that with. And individuals are going to have to want to do it. I mean, you can't make a slave free. Like, slave wants to be a slave, slave's going to be a slave. But like never before have we had an opportunity to harness these tools of technology to increase our freedom, whether it's Bitcoin, Namecoin, BitMessage, Maidsafe, KeePassX, Tor, I2P, Tails, like whatever it is, CJDNS, Hyperborea. I mean, we have so many of these tools. People just really have to claim their freedom if they want it. And it's going to be increasingly costly to go after the people that are claiming their freedom. And at the end of the day, not all of the buffalo make it across the river, but the alligators are going to go after the weakest of the swimmers. And if you adapt and grow wings and fly over the river, the alligator's not going to care about you.
I love it. All right, where can people connect with you on the internet?
Howtovanish.com is a good place, runtogold.com, and then the free bitcoinguide.com if you want to get that.
Cool. Trace, thanks so much for being on the show with me.
Wonderful. Thanks, Stephanie.
Thanks for listening to episode 103 of Let's Talk Bitcoin. Visit us at letstalkbitcoin.com for more content, subscribe to our feeds, tip our shows, and of course, try out all the other shows on the LTB network. Content for this episode was provided by Stephanie Murphy, David Irvine, Tatiana Moroz, and Trace Mayer. This episode was edited by Adam B. Levine. Music for this episode was provided by Jared Rubens, Tatiana Moroz, and Niles Fromm. Any questions or comments? Email Adam at letstalkbitcoin.com. Have a good one.